Good evening, everyone. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner, and tonight I'm going to cover the topic of heat sink. But before I do, I wanted to let you guys know that I have published 5 Kindle books. If you're interested in any of these books, please let me know in the comments below, and then I will send you a link so you can read my latest one, and so on and so forth. Okay? So anyway, with that out of the way, let me go ahead with my presentation tonight. A heat sink is designed to move heat away from an object that is prone to generate heat. The central processing unit of a computer is a good example of a metallic component in a computer that generates lots of heat when electricity passes through it. Okay? Now I will now show you an actual heat sink attached to a central processing unit of an old computer. This used to be in an old computer of mine. Okay? As you can see up here, there's a fan. See that fan? Okay? Now you also see these metal pieces around here. Well, I'm going to get more detailed in a future video about this, okay? Because this is just going to be a brief overview at this point. And if I get any of these details wrong, I'm sure that there's going to be somebody that's going to come around and say, well, you didn't get quite all the details right. Fine. Good. But in the meantime, we know that the fan is drawing heat. The CPU is right here. Okay? You can see the CPU is right here. The fan is drawing heat from the CPU. Why is the CPU getting hot? Because it has electricity flowing through it. And this is a big-time conductor of electricity. You getting the idea now? And when you have that much of electricity going through the CPU, you're going to generate heat. Trust me. So if you don't want to melt your chip within the first few seconds of running your computer, you will have to have the fan on. Now, what about this metal around here? Okay, this can also gather heat. When you gather the heat from the CPU, you don't want it just going in one direction. You don't want it going like straight up or straight this way or straight that way, because whatever you hit with that thing is going to be hit with the full heat of what was on the CPU. Instead, you want to distribute that heat evenly outside of your computer so that you don't heat up other components while you're trying to keep the CPU cool. Because you're like, well, I kept the CPU cool, but I fried everything else. I don't think you want that to happen. Okay? I have to say at this point that fans aren't the only devices used to cool computer components. And computer components aren't the only devices that need heat sinks. Solar panels could also benefit from heat sinks. Okay? I've seen this in videos. These people have solar panels and they take a Fresnel lens and they add it to the solar panel, but they also add a heat sink. And this would be some kind of a liquid heat sink to draw the heat away from the solar panel so it doesn't get damaged, okay? And you say, well, why would sunlight through a Fresnel lens, okay, you got your sunlight, you got your Fresnel lens, why would that damage the solar panel? Because the sun rays generate heat. And now you got a concentrated light hitting a solar panel, so it's going to generate more heat. So you want that heat to go somewhere and to be removed from the solar panel. Well, the way you do that is when you have like a bunch of tubes on the back of the solar panel with antifreeze in them. And what happens is that the sunlight hits the solar panel, generates heat, and that heat travels to the antifreeze, and you pump the antifreeze away once it's pulled all the heat out of it. And then the antifreeze goes somewhere else, cools down, then you reuse it. Okay? But this is a complicated process, and I would highly recommend you guys doing a ton of research on how you can build such a device before you actually do it. Because if you don't set up the heat sink properly, or you don't put it in there at all, and you try to use a Fresnel lens, you're going to start a fire. And that's something you don't want to do. So, high recommendation, do tons of research, not only on Fresnel lenses, but also on heat sinks to make sure they're set up properly, then implement the whole thing. Because you want those solar panels as cool as possible. Because you get them hot enough, they'll get damaged. You get them really hot, they'll catch on fire. And that you don't want. Okay? So, anyway, Now, does it really matter what kind of antifreeze you use? Well, just make sure it's the kind of antifreeze that can keep the solar panel from getting so hot that it either damages the components or literally catches on fire. You got to make sure of that. So, like I said, you're going to need a ton of research on this. Don't just suddenly rush out and do anything. Make sure you do the research you need to do to make this thing work properly. Alright? And that's all I've got to say in this particular video. So I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. I will tell you more in a future video, so I'd like for you to stay tuned.